Welcome to the Dale Lolley Show here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I am your host, Dale Lolley, and well, it's another game day for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They'll play preseason game number 2. That will happen, of course, Saturday at Jacksonville at TIAA Bank Stadium. And as I did last week, I'll preview some of the guys that I am looking forward to seeing participate in action tonight, guys that I'll be keeping a close eye on in this one. Of course, the first guy will be Kenny Pickett. I know everybody's raving about how Pickett played last week, and I'm not going to here to throw a wet towel on that or anything like that. He played well, but he also did some rookie things like taking a sack on 4th down and things like that. So there are some things here that you'd like to see Kenny Pickett clean up a little bit. Go out there, lead the second team offense. He'll play, of course, after Mitchell Trubisky gets his shot with the first unit. I expect that to be somewhere, maybe early second quarter, somewhere in that range. I think Mike Tomlin will allow the starters to stretch things out a little bit here in this game, unless, of course, they go out there and play really well, and then maybe he won't. I also want to see Chase Claypool. Of course, we didn't get to see Chase Claypool last week in that preseason opener. He's largely been banged up, a couple different shoulder injuries in this training camp thus far. But they have plans to use him out of the slot, and I want to see how that looks. Got to see it a little bit in practice this week. He's a matchup issue in the slot, and I think they can do some things with Chase Claypool working out of the slot that really kind of open up this offense, because when you start looking at it, if you're an opposing defense and the Steelers have their 4 eligible receivers out there, and you've got Freiermuth and Claypool in the slot, who you covering with a big guy? Who you covering with a small guy in that situation? So if you pull, the two inside linebackers, if you're in a nickel, out to cover those guys, well, that's not going to work. And if so you're taking some big players off the middle of the field. And, maybe then you can run the ball a little more effectively out of some of the 11 personnel. I want to see Miles Boykin here with Anthony Miller now out for the season. That opens up a spot in the wide receiver room. Steven Sims, we saw him make a couple of plays last week. Can Miles Boykin follow suit this week and make some plays, and not just make some plays in the passing game? How's he looking in special teams, on special teams? That's what could be the determining factor there, because Steven Sims is a return guy, but do they really need a return guy here? Do they need somebody else to run down and cover? I want to see Trey Norwood follow up on what I thought was a pretty good game by him last week, come out and do it again. Arthur Millett's probably not going to play in this game this week. And so, that opens up that slot job. Carl Joseph also was in the mix in that slot job, for that slot job. Well, he's out with a season-ending injury as well. So can Trey Norwood be more physical? If not, do they have to move DeMonte KZ into a nickel role, a big nickel role? So we'll see. That's all yet to be seen. KZ's another guy that I want to see in this game. I thought he played well last week, really pushing hard to play somewhere in the defense. Maybe they'll come up with that dime package that I wrote about earlier this week as a way to get DeMonte KZ more playing time. I want to see Anthony McFarland follow up on what I thought was a really good game by him last week. Ran the ball effectively. We've seen him catch the ball really effectively at training camp. Working him out of the slot with Najee Harris or with another running back in the backfield. Can that continue? How do teams match up against him? Again, are they putting a linebacker on Anthony McFarland? If that happens, that's a win for the Steelers. Anthony McFarland will blow that matchup away. He's way faster than any linebacker in the league. And he catches the ball pretty well for a running back. Actually, really well for a running back. Catches it almost like a wide receiver. So we'll see how that goes. I want to see Jalen Warren as well. We saw him fumble last week, but this week he passed Benny Snell on the depth chart. They were using him with the 2s. Snell was with the 3s. As I wrote about a couple of weeks ago, there were a lot of people in the organization, including some people really high up in the organization, who feel like he was the second best running back in this camp, but you can't fumble. got to hold on to the football. So that'll be a big test for him in this game. Obviously, Devin Bush is a guy that everybody's going to have their eyes on. I don't need to talk a whole lot about that. That's been talked to death. But I also want to see the entire offensive line go out there and play as a unit and not make the mistakes that they made in the first game, passing guys off, things of that nature, communication issues, identifying the Mike linebacker, things of that nature. I want to see that communication get better in this second week than it was a week ago. That's the expectation. And finally, I'm really interested to see Larry Ogunjobi in this game. Didn't get to see him last week. Haven't gotten to see a ton of him in training camp, but what I've seen, I've really liked. I mean, he's a talented guy. They went out and got him to help offset the loss of Stephon Tuitt. And while he's not Stephon Tuitt, he's a pretty good football player. And I think fans are really going to like what he adds to this defense once they get a chance to see him on the football field. Ogunjobi's a guy that really adds something to this defense. They could have a pretty formidable pass rush with those top guys on the field. I don't think we're going to see Cam Hayward in this game. Maybe we don't see TJ Watt either after Hayward got banged up a little bit in practice on Thursday. But certainly when they put those guys out there against the Cincinnati Bengals in week 1, that is as formidable a pass rush as you'll see in the NFL. I'm going to take a break. When I come back, we'll talk a little more about the Steelers here. What I learned at training camp again. Let's talk about some other stuff that I saw out there. We'll do that when we return. This is the Dale Lolley Show on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Welcome back. I'm Dale Lolley here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. This is the Dale Lolley Show. And in case you missed it, I had an interesting conversation yesterday, or Thursday, I should say, with Deontay Johnson. And I mentioned him that everybody's talking about how the Steelers are going to come out and just go run heavy in 2022. And people are wondering, how's that going to work with Najee Harris? How can they run him more? And Deontay Johnson kind of scoffed at that. He said, they can say what they want. They're not here working with us every day. I don't listen to the outside stuff. We know the game plan. They don't. Hearing people say it's going to be run heavy, it's not. Sit back and watch the game. We'll let the game speak for itself. We'll let that do the talking for us. And that's kind of what I saw in this training camp when you start looking at it. Think about it this way. The Steelers gave Deontay Johnson a contract extension. They're going to pay him $18 million a year. Now, not this year, but they did give him $19 in new money this year. Obviously, they want to keep him around. They used a second-round pick this year on George Pickens. They used a second-round pick last year on Pat Freiermuth. And I know they used a first-round pick on Najee Harris as well, but the year before that, they used a second-round pick on Chase Claypool. They want an offense that's explosive, folks. That's not an offense that's going to come out here and we're just going to run and grind and run the ball 500 times in a season or do anything like that. The Steelers want to throw the football. And so that to me is why I want to see in this game, Mitch Trubisky go out there, move the offense. I know they did fine last week, but he wasn't out there with Pickens. Pickens played, but he wasn't out there with Pickens, Johnson, Claypool, Freiermuth, Najee Harris. What that offense is going to look like when the Steelers open the season in week 1 against the Cincinnati Bengals on September 11th. We haven't gotten to see that. We didn't get to see that a lot in training camp. A lot of those guys were banged up, or Johnson was, holding out the first week and a half or so of training camp, sitting out. Claypool was injured. Freiermuth was injured. Harris was injured. So we didn't get to see those guys on the practice field together until this week. And when you see those guys out there with Pickens and Johnson on the outside, and then, Claypool in the slot, And Freiermuth is either, lined up in line or also in the slot, or they can stack those guys and get the matchups they want. Three on one side, one on the other. There's a lot of different things that they can do out of that. And how the defense reacts to that will let them know whether they're going to run the ball or pass the ball. If they get a light box against that, which they probably should, then you come out and you run the football. If the defense tries to keep bigger bodies on the field, you're going to throw the football against that. It's really interesting. So I want to see what this looks like this week. That's the biggest thing that I want to see in this football game this week for the Pittsburgh Steelers. What that first team offense looks like against an NFL opponent with Trubisky out there throwing the ball to those guys, handing the ball to Najee Harris. I want to see if the defense starts to back off a little bit. They've been throwing some deeper passes. They've been attacking down the field. It's going to be a deeper offense, much more aggressive offense than it was a year ago. And I know they were aggressive at times. Ben Roethlisberger would chuck the ball down the sideline, but he wasn't completing a high percentage of those. I think with this group they can. And we've seen Freiermuth attack the deep middle of the field, down the seam. We saw Claypool attack deep down the seam. Those are passes we didn't see in 2021. So I really want to see that. I want to see if the Steelers put that on tape and show opposing teams. I know the Bengals will be watching this tape closely because this is a pretty new offense with some of these guys. So I'm sure the Bengals will be going over this particular first quarter and however long Trubisky's out there pretty closely in the build as they get ready to play the Steelers in week 1. Show them you can throw the ball deep. Back those safeties off a little bit. Give them a little something to fear. We'll keep an eye on that in this game Saturday night. That is going to do it for the Dale Lolley Show today. I'll be back later next week to wrap up the game and talk about what we have going on moving forward. You can listen to all of our shows here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Pirates, Steelers, Penguins, Pitt, Penn State. Lots of stuff going on there. Of course, you can check out Matt Williamson's Scouts Take as well. But that's going to do it for me today. I'll talk to you later.